Illegally, call the Turn-In Poachers hotline at 1-800-667-7561.
When you can't do it all, do what you can. Caring for others. Pass it on. A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
KidSport is a children's charity, and it's all about giving underprivileged kids a chance to participate in community sport programs instead of the alternatives. Every kid deserves a chance.
Make your call today so all kids can play.
Learning can happen anywhere. Set aside 15 minutes a day to read with your children.
In Gear is brought to you in part by Boston Pizza, come and get it all, and Kings Park Speedway, we're kicking asphalt.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the show that puts you in the driver's seat, In Gear, here on Access 7. I'm Joey Hadisbeck. We have got, again, a plethora of information on automobiles for you this evening. Pretty big word for an announcer boy, yes, I know. But we do have lots and lots to get to tonight, including Barry's Automotive Adventures. We're going to visit a classic Barry's Automotive Adventures. He is going to talk to the gentleman with the Silver Cloud Rolls Royce. Actually, it's not a Silver Cloud. Yeah, it is. Never mind. I was right the first time. We're going to take a look at that in the next little bit as well. We've got part two of an interview that Gersh Matter did with Dennis DeRosier, and you're going to really find that interesting. If you missed part one, there is going to be the full show on Plugged In with Gersh in the coming months, and you'll get a chance to see that. But we have part two of an interview that she did with Dennis, the car guru. We've got that later on. Plus, it's a very, very busy weekend, automotive-wise, here in Regina. Just some of the events that are coming up. There is a show and shine, kind of a cruise night, at the Avonhurst A&W tomorrow night. That's the North Albert Street A&W. Kelly and Barry Davies are going to be there, so make sure you head down and take that in. Lots of great cars, and everybody is welcome to bring their classic, their antique, or their hot rod, or whatever they like, come down. And again, that's going to be at the Avonhurst A&W. That's tomorrow night. Also, tomorrow afternoon, if you happen to be out in White City, the folks from Racing Against Drugs are going to be out there, and they're going to be talking to the kids out at one of the White City schools. So if you happen to be out there, say hello to those guys. Also on the weekend, the Ford and Mercury Club are going to be at the Canadian Tire North Store Sunday from 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, and they invite all Ford and Mercury owners to come down, and everybody else is welcome as well to come down and take a look at all the great Ford and Mercs that are going to be there. Of course, tomorrow night, Saturday night, the Collectors Car Club, starting at about 6 p.m. at the T.C. Douglas building, get there early, are going to be starting their show and shine in a bit of a cruise. They're going to end up at the North Canadian Tire store. So Canadian Tire are going to be very busy this weekend. Again, antiques, classics and hot rods of all sorts. About 300 or so vehicles are going to be cruising from the T.C. Douglas building up to the Canadian Tire North store, so you want to make sure you take that in on Saturday. But don't just stay there all night, because there's racing out at Kings Park Speedway as well. 7 o'clock, all 5 classes are going to be on the track, so we've got that, plus a whole bunch more. Couple more things before we get into it. I want to say happy birthday to my little guy, Riley. He's 3 years old today. Happy birthday, buddy. And I want to say thank you to my son, Christopher, and all his classmates at Rosemont School. We had the WBM racing machine there the other day for a little super show and tell, and all the kids had a great time, and I had fun. So all of Christopher's classmates, hello, and Christopher, hello to you too. All right, let's get into it. I'll introduce you to my guest this evening, and it is Quentin Silzer. Quentin, thank you very much for being on the show tonight.
Thanks for inviting me down, Joey.
You're welcome. From Pro Certified Auto Service as well, my head mechanic and co-driver of Stick Boy Motorsports, the original Stick.
You're too kind.
I am. But what we're going to talk about this evening, folks, at least for starters, is cooling system, because the way the weather was yesterday, a little bit today, temperature's starting to get up there quite a bit now, and people are going to be hitting the highway, taking those road trips, and we want to make sure that their cooling system's working fine.
That's right. There's a lot of things that can happen with the cooling system that you miss over the winter time because the temperatures are so cold, obviously. The engines do have more time to heat up in the winter. In the summertime, you can drive them quicker. Flow is a big important issue during the summer months, as well as airflow across the rad. Things that happen to get put on the dash during the winter that may have rolled down into the venting and blocks up vents. Maybe a few things that you can look for before you actually go in and spend the big dollars to have the system looked at that, of course, you can do yourself, and everybody likes to save.
Yeah,
a couple of bucks.
exactly. And I never thought of that. You're right. We all stick things up on our dash, and sometimes they get in there, and that's going to block that flow. And really, that's the ultimate, is what you need, is flow both through the front of the car and then throughout the car as well.
That's right, Joey. Excuse me, we found everything from pens to old hotel keys that we've had to actually phone and return that are like 2 or 3 years old. Guys have bought the car, put them up there, forgot about them. But they'll come into us and they'll say, well, we're not getting enough defrost.
Right.
Well, where do you start? It could be a problem with the heater core. It could be a problem with the engine not getting hot enough. Even something maybe with the air conditioning. Now, it sounds strange that your air conditioning in the winter might be a defrost problem, but what it can do is it does dry the air inside the vehicle when it's running. So you might hear the odd time in the winter that the compressor is running for the air conditioning, and it is drying the air inside, which means less frost on the inside of the windows.
Okay. I'm going on a big trip. I'm taking the car out on the highway. I want to open up the hood. What do I want to look at? I know it's going to be the hose for starters, and what else do I want to make sure before I hit the highway?
Right. There's a lot of things you can check yourself, as I mentioned. First thing, as a precaution, make sure that the car is cooled right down, because there is a lot of pressure and a lot of heat in the cooling system, and you can get burned fairly easily.
Right.
Especially if you have a bad rad cap and you happen to touch it the wrong way, you can get scorched in seconds. A few things I'd be looking into would be checking the belts.
Right.
If they're not tight or there's not enough traction on the belts, the water pump can start to slip. There's your rad cap, of course. Take a look in the reservoir. You might find kind of a sludgy gray matter that's starting to form in there.
Okay.
At that point in time, get the car down to a reputable shop, find out what it's going to cost to have the system flushed. And what they do is they add a chemical, they heat it up, it gets rid of all the corrosion, they flush the old coolant out, or in some cases, some of the people are now recycling it and reinstalling it back in the coolant system.
Again. Oh, that's all right. Good. Yeah, you really want to take a look at that hose. And what should you look for? I mean, do you want to look on the ends, or you want to take a look at that whole hose?
Right. The hoses, what happens is they're made of rubber, of course. They deteriorate from cold and heat and chemical.
Right.
So if you can grab a hold of the hose, just see if you can find any spots that are weak, where it seems less or more rubbery, I guess it would be.
Right, if it's a little squishy, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. Now you have to be careful too. Some have a coiled wire inside that keep them extended.
Okay.
And if you feel that wire inside the hose and it seems like it's wanting to poke through or whatever, it's time to get a new rad hose. Now don't forget about the rad clamps as well, because a lot of places or a lot of people will change the hose but won't change the clamps.
Okay.
And of course they'll wear out.
Now, when you're looking at the clamps, you want to make sure they're tight, but again, I don't think you want to over-tighten them, because you're going to maybe cause that little crack down right, of course, where all the pressure is going to be coming in and out of the rad.
That's a good point, Joe. Yeah, a lot of people over-tighten the rad clamps and they start to strip the gear mechanism in them. As soon as there's pressure there, some vibration, that clamp can blow apart, then off comes the hose.
They want to take a look at the upper hose and the lower as well.
And the lower and your heater hoses. They're very important as well. There's a lot of flow through the heater, and people just neglect to check them.
Okay. For the antifreeze itself, we've talked about it before on the show. Now, it's there in the winter to keep it from freezing, and in Canada, that's what we concern ourselves the most with. But through the summer, you want to make sure that antifreeze is up to snuff as well, because it's going to keep your engine running, and it's going to keep it from seizing up. And again, when you're on the highway, you definitely can't afford that.
That's right. An antifreeze isn't just an antifreeze; it's also it helps cool the system down. Straight water compared to antifreeze, the boiling temperature is probably going to be quite a bit different.
Okay. As well, when we're heading out on the highway, we want to take a look at the belts, make sure they're all okay. What do we look for there? Again, cracks or wearing or wear on the belt itself?
Yeah, and on some of the newer units as well that have the new serpentine belts, which are the larger ones, they have a tensioner as well that keeps a strict tension on that belt. A lot of the cases, they'll start to chip the gear or the running surface of the idler,
Okay.
or the idler will start to get weak, and if you've got the engine running, you've got the hood open, you can almost see the tensioner bouncing.
Okay.
Okay, now the springs can get weak in those. There could be a lot of things go wrong there.
Again, something you want to take a look at. Probably not. Would you do that at home? Is that something you can fix up at home?
You could take a look at it at home. A lot of the belts are pretty easy to change, but again, on anything like this, if you're not sure and you're not comfortable doing it, either get advice or come to a service shop and have it done for you. It's not that expensive to get a belt put on, considering it's running your alternator, your water pump, and all your other accessories.
Yeah, very important.
Very important.
It's a $5, $10 part or around there, and it can blow the whole thing up.
That's right.
And we don't want that.
That's right.
Okay. All right, folks, we are going to go to a classic Barry's Automotive Adventure. A little while ago, he had a chance to speak to a gentleman in town that owns a great-looking Silver Cloud Rolls-Royce. It's a great interview, and it's a classic Barry's Automotive Adventure. Let's go take a look here on In Gear.
And welcome to another edition of Barry's Automotive Adventures. Well, here I am sitting in the lap of luxury, so to speak. A lap of luxury with some hockey history. We're going to check it out in just a second, but here's to you. Let's go look. We're visiting with Ed Williamson today and his 1971 Silver Shadow Rolls-Royce. And this has a little bit of history. First of all, Ed, thanks for taking some time out with us today. Nice sunshiny day.
It's a beautiful day, yeah, it is. And we haven't had many of those for a while.
Let's talk about the history of this 71 Rolls-Royce. First of all, where did it come from?
Okay, originally this car was sold new to a customer in Belgium. We actually went over and took a look at it when we heard it was for sale, and I liked it. Well, there's not much not to like. I know a little bit about Rolls-Royces, and we checked it all out and everything and purchased it, and we actually drove it around Europe for a little while, and then had it shipped home. We flew home and had the car shipped home later.
It's quite a status symbol, owning a Silver Shadow, a Rolls-Royce of any kind, but the Silver Shadow really holds a status symbol. It has been driven by royalty. It has been driven by many celebrities all around the world.
Yeah, well, they're quite a car. They deserve half their reputation that they have worldwide anyway. You know, it's a well-earned reputation that Rolls-Royce has. They are the Rolls-Royce of automobiles.
Now, you've got it here in Regina. Pray tell, what do you do with it?
Actually, don't do a whole bunch with it. I own a limousine company on the side. I have a job that I do day to day, but I have a limousine company on the side, and we use the Rolls Royces with the limousines. We use them for weddings and anniversaries and graduations and things like that. But you know, they're for a fairly discerning type customer. They're not a standard limousine type customer, but we pick up a lot of interesting people and things like that. Gordie Howe was in town yesterday. Wow. I don't know if you know that, but he was in town doing something with the post office about a stamp or something, so he got a ride in one. Interesting.
And I'm told that the inside, the interior of a Rolls-Royce can tell a story. Can you take us on a bit of a tour and tell us that story?
Sure. No, there's some interesting things about Rolls-Royce. You might want to know that they have their own cattle.
Wow.
They produce their own hides, a company called Connolly Leather. They also use Connolly Leather in Jaguar, Aston Martin, things like that. Take a look at them. The cows are raised in fields in small English villages, and they have no fences. And they're designed that way so that the cow can never brush up against a barbed wire fence or anything. They just have moats that separate things. So the hides are unblemished. The cows are all dehorned and examined quite frequently. And if any blemishes do go, they're sold to lesser leather companies. Some interesting things about this car is it has a rare option. It has a leather headliner, Connolly leather headliner. And that option in 1971 cost about $5,400, which is approximately the cost of a 1971 Mustang.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, but they are a beautiful car. You'll notice all the rare woods. They used a burled walnut or a burled rosewood. They also use bird's eye maple inlays, and then they're covered with a process called French polishing, where they use lacquer and rub a pumice in by hand, and they do many coats of wood. You get into a Rolls-Royce, and the first thing that hits you is that smell, leather and wood. It's pretty incredible.
It is an incredible smell. As a matter of fact, when I jumped in a little while ago, I thought to myself, That reminds me of my dad's British console. I remember that smell so well. It took me right back into the, oh man, I was just a little guy then.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing. And you know, you got to consider something. This car is 30 years old, and you get into it, and the smell is the first thing that hits you. It still has a rich, unbelievable smell.
It really does have a rich smell to it right away, and you notice it right away too.
Yeah. Here's another interesting thing about Rolls-Royces is we'll just let go of this door. The door closes.
You don't have to slam it.
No, you don't, and the door closes. They'll all do the same thing, the front door. You just open it, and just let it go. The door closes.
Bang.
Yeah. Interesting thing about Rolls-Royce, again, you'll notice the door is aluminum. The roof line is aluminum. The wings, or fenders, are very heavy gauge metal, okay? The bonnet, or the hood, again, aluminum. So you've got a complex combination of metals here, and they don't get along. Aluminum touching steel produces an electrolysis oxidation process. So the painting process and the gasketing process and everything is very complicated on a Rolls-Royce. But the aluminum helps keep the weight down on the unsprung areas, which is important because you have to realize something. This isn't that big of a car. It's designed for those narrow little English roads and streets. But this car weighs over 3 tons.
My goodness. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, with a full tank of gas, which is considerable. At today's wonderful prices, it's $100 to fill the tank on this car.
That's a huge tank.
Yeah, it is. It's about 28 imperial gallons. And as I said, at today's prices, that's $100. So, yeah, and it doesn't go all that far, unfortunately.
Okay, so that begs asking the question, what kind of mileage?
Actually, it's not something I think most Rolls-Royce owners are really concerned about. I would have to venture in this city driving around probably around 8.
8 miles to the gallon?
Yeah.
Okay, Ed, let's take a look under the bonnet.
Okay. Okay, here you go. This is about a 417 cubic inch engine, 6.8 some liters. It has two barrel SU Bell carburetors. Okay, it is an aluminum block with aluminum heads. It has stainless steel cylinder sleeves pressed into the block, which can each be replaced if you had a catastrophic failure of one cylinder, which has not happened.
Thank goodness.
Yes. These engines are about $10,000 Canadian to rebuild the engine. They use an awful lot of aircraft technology. Rolls-Royce, as you know, or may not know, makes the world's best aircraft engines as well. They have a tremendous history and involvement in the aircraft industry. The car has, as I said, aluminum block, aluminum heads, stainless steel cylinder sleeves, forged aluminum pistons, and titanium alloy connecting rods. Again, the standards and specifications on these engines are pretty incredible. What some car manufacturers consider a specification between, you know, let's say 10 thousandths and 14 thousandths of an inch would be standard and normal.
Right.
Rolls-Royce, if it approached those standards, they would say, oh, this one's past what we need to rebuild it or replace it. So incredible tight specifications. They use component parts from other companies. For example, you'll see the air conditioning compressor is actually a Frigidaire.
Right.
But it isn't just a standard Frigidaire air conditioning compressor. It's built by Rolls-Royce to their specifications under license from Frigidaire. The same with the alternator would be a Delco, standard GM Delco alternator, but it's built by Rolls-Royce to their specifications and totally different than a normal Delco alternator. The suspension system on this car is one of the incredible things about Shadow series Rolls-Royces. It's run with accumulators. Okay. And it works on a very high pressure. The engine, driving a pump, develops about 4,000 psi hydraulic pressure, okay, which runs the braking system and the suspension system. The suspension is semi-active. Now, we're talking a car that's 30 years old.
Right.
But if you were to enter a long sweeping curve and the car started to tilt to one side, the suspension would recognize that, activate a pump, and the car would level. Now, again, it takes a time to do this. It's not like the modern active cars. But again, as I said, you got to remember, this is 30-year-old technology.
That's incredible technology from 30 years ago.
Yep. There's many things. For example, the rear window You know, people talk about rear window defoggers. Well, I have a 1960 Rolls-Royce, and this car has the exact same thing. Embedded between two panes of glass in the rear window is a very fine, almost invisible mesh of sterling silver wire, which is electronically heated. The rear window will completely defog very quickly, and again, as I said, the wires are almost invisible. I don't know if you'd even be able to see them on camera, and it works almost instantaneously. And again, this is 30-year-old technology, and we have a car that's 50 years old that has the same technology.
Obviously, you're a big fan of Rolls-Royce. When did this fascination with this car start?
Well, I was born in England. I came to this country with my parents at a fairly early age, and my first cars, I was influenced probably by my dad and my early upbringing seeing British cars. My first cars were little British sports cars. I had Austin Healey's and MG's and Triumphs and things like that. And then I graduated to a Jaguar. And then I bought my first Rolls-Royce I ever bought was a Bentley, actually, which is very similar. And then I got my first Rolls-Royce was a 1939 Wraith limousine, which I bought and used in my little part-time business. And then I bought a Silver Cloud series, which is the series immediately before the Shadow. And then I got this one. This is a very interesting car, and I bought this car in '88 and went over to Belgium and got it. I had it for about 3.5 years, and I actually sold it to a friend of mine in Leduc, Alberta, just outside of Edmonton. And a week after I sold it, I was a very sorry man, and I have been whining and sniveling and moaning and trying to get this car back for 9 years. And I finally got it back about 1.5 years ago, and I'm very pleased I did. Should have never sold it. I don't know why I did.
Ed, the hood ornament on a Rolls-Royce is very distinctive.
Yeah, it's probably the most famous hood ornament in the world. It's instantly recognizable all over the world. The actual name of it is the Spirit of Ecstasy, and it was originally a sculptor from English sculptor by the name of Charles Sykes, and up until 1960, each and every one was hand-signed by the sculptor, made under license from Charles Sykes, and had a serial number. And then after that, they increased their production to a point where they thought that wasn't necessary anymore. But we're still talking where they made from 500 cars a year to maybe 1,000 cars a year. Like, this is their entire production. The hood ornament on this particular car is spring-loaded. It's one of the safety features so that it didn't impale anybody or anything like that. It's also hooked up to an alarm. If you move the hood ornament or try to tamper with it or steal it, the horn goes off very loudly. They're a very expensive little ornaments and quite a collector's item, and the target of many people who wish to acquire them without purchasing them.
I would say everything on this car is expensive.
You got that right. But again, like I say, you get quality. You know, you do get what you pay for. They do deserve their reputation. For example, this car is 30 years old, and this is in totally original condition. It has not been repainted. It has not been, nothing has been re-chromed. The seats have not been redone or anything else. The car has lasted 30 years with regular routine maintenance, and it stands before you in this condition. A testament to the durability and the ability of Rolls-Royce to make an incredibly fine automobile.
Absolutely incredible. Okay, we were alluding at the front end of the show that there's a bit of a hockey history to this Rolls-Royce.
Well, there is, actually. If you remember, I told you that at one time I was foolish enough to sell this car to a friend of mine who lives in Leduc, just outside of Edmonton. Well, something happened up there was Mr. Gretzky, who everybody I'm sure is familiar with, decided to get married. And at his wedding, he wanted some nice cars. So he used, I believe, 3 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadows from various sources, and one of them happened to be my friend. And this car was one of the cars used in the wedding and carried some of the people from the party and Mr. Gretzky and his new bride. And it was used there, and as you see, Mr. Gretzky's got a jersey here, and if we turn it around, okay, you will see that it has been autographed by same said Mr. Gretzky. So that's the Canadian history hockey connection with this car, which is kind of incredible. And when you realize that, as I said, there's very few of these in the entire world, and here's one that has a bit of interesting connection to Canadian historical figure.
from Belgium to what almost amounts to be a royal wedding in Canada.
Ah, yes. Yeah, you got it there. It was quite the wedding. There's pictures of it. Everybody knows about that one.
Ed, thank you very, very much for allowing us to take the tour of the Rolls-Royce and getting the history on it. It's really quite an incredible vehicle.
Well, I feel privileged to be the temporary custodian of such fine vehicles, you know, knowing that they will far outlast me. And I believe I'm privileged just to talk about them and promote them because I really have a lot of respect and admiration for them.
And that's another edition of Barrie's Automotive Adventures, an expensive adventure this time round. See you next week.
Did you know that after Hong Kong was handed over to China from Britain in 1997, everything of British culture was removed and replaced with the Chinese way except for one thing? That being that cars continued to drive on the left side of the road. It was going to be way too costly to change the highways, so the exits went off on the other side. All right, time for Auto World News. Design your own tires. Well, sort of. Tires have been round and black forever. Well, ever since they started putting carbon black into them. That is, before they were sort of a tan or an off-white color. But that's another story. Lately, though, things have been changing visually in the tire world. Tires are still round, but they're not just black anymore. The BF Goodrich folks changed that a while back with their color stripe Scorcher TAs, which have bright color stripes running around the tread. Now the BFG gang has stepped up the action a notch by allowing customers to custom design their own set of Scorchers. You can choose 2 stripe colors from a selection of 8, and you can also select where they're placed around the tread circumference. The colors include red, purple, orchid, teal, blue, orange, light green, and yellow. These striking colors are aimed at the rapidly growing customizing and hot rodding phenomenon, which started on the west coast of the States and is known as the import performance craze, but since has expanded to take in just about any small car. Wild wheel and tire combinations are very much a part and look of the attitude. Make sure you head to bfgoodrich.com and take a look at that. Affordable in-car internet access is the key. A study of consumers' interest in web access equipped in new vehicles found demand is extremely price sensitive. At $5 per month, 48% of the 5,126 respondents said they would be interested in having internet access in their vehicle. At $25 per month, the rate collapses to less than 15%. And if the service cost more than $25, interest then dwindles down to about 8%. Art Spinella, CNW's vice president, said while the auto industry is intent on including some internet access in their vehicles, it is clear consumers are less enthusiastic at certain price points, regardless of how good the service or the content is. The Oregon-based research company forecasts that eventually more than 3.5 million new vehicles annually will be fitted with internet access hardware within the next 5 years. More than half of those, however, will be in business fleet and company vehicles, not general consumer cars and trucks, the company says. So look for internet access and colored tires in the near future. That's going to do it for Auto World News tonight. And Tony Stewart won the race on the weekend. So let's talk a little bit about racing. Quentin, what do you think? Let's take a look at some of the stuff we've got out here on the table. If Kelsey can get in there and get some shots. First off, we've got the great-looking John Deere car, and I think you go for him a little, don't you?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit?
In a while when I'm not cheering on the Earnhardt.
When you're not cheering on the Earnhardt. Of course, these are Joanne Morris, my girlfriend's. She lets me bring them out of the house every once in a while. I have to take very great care when I take them out of the house.
I saw the Brinks truck pull up with them in, Joey.
Exactly. Look, there's the guy that won the race on the weekend. He has been having kind of an up and down year. I believe he's still in the top 10 in the overall points, but that's Tony Stewart's Home Depot car. There was a Cascar West car that looked like that. It didn't have Home Depot as a sponsorship, but they ran up in Saskatoon at Bridge City Speedway last week, and Kim Richard out of Calgary, Alberta, in the Cascar West Super Series has that same paint scheme. There's DW, buddy. He's got flames on his car.
That's right. That's right.
Flames are back, you
It's
know.
coming back.
I know it is.
Have you seen them on the motorcycle helmets and that rolling around town lately?
There's been a little bit of everything. That's the thing. Even when we were at the Majestics car show, people had T-shirts with flames on them.
That's
so
right.
Flames are definitely coming back. Oh, and there's the one that you like, and you can't see the number, folks, but that's the number 3. Just push it up a little bit, but don't run it off the end of the table. I mean, I know it's used to crashing, but...
Well, I think it's used to passing.
Oh, it's not
more the
used
way
to
it is.
passing. It is not.
Okay, bumping.
All right. That's, of course, Dale Earnhardt's car from the Winston a few years ago. Actually, that's the Atlanta 1996 games. And we'll get you to pick up the deal on the end, Quinton, because that's one of your prized possessions. That, of course, the Dale Earnhardt Ratchet. And
That
you've got
is.
that. That's something a little special. Tell us a little bit about that. Hold that up so Kelsey can grab that one with the camera. And tell us a little bit about that. That's a special item you got a little while ago.
That is. I bought this back in '93. It was a specialty series that they'd come out with. And as you can see, it's just a regular chrome ratchet that was put out by Mac Tools at the time. And '93 was when Earnhardt apparently had won the Winston Cup.
Right.
And I think it was just the year before he went to Snap-on, when Snap-on came on as
Okay.
a major sponsor. So that was a little collector thing I found on the tool truck that I keep telling I bought the wife. Bought it for the wife for an anniversary gift. That's the only way I could get it in the house. But it's a nice little keepsake.
That was one of the anniversary presents. Now, for her birthday, I think what'd she get?
She got a cordless impact.
Right.
And she got some micrometers.
Right, micrometers. That's
That's
what
right.
every woman is looking for their birthday, isn't it?
I hope so.
All right then. Hey, we got one more. Look, there's our girl.
I recognize that one.
Folks, if you haven't had a chance to come out to Kings Park Speedway this year, if you weren't at the Majestics Car Show, that's the WBM race machine. And if you get a chance, come out to Kings Park this Saturday night starting at 7 o'clock. We're out there in the Cass Car Sportsman Division. Just one of the great cars that you'll get a chance to see out at Kings Park. We've got the trucks and the streets, and it was good racing a couple of Sundays ago. We're looking forward to Saturday night.
That's right. I sure am. And I just heard from Derek Sens. He
Right.
came into the shop today and told me that his little Honda's up and going. He got the vacuum leaks all fixed on it, and he's just pumped.
Oh, good
and that was a
stuff.
fast little car last year, and he's going to do well, I'm pretty sure, this year.
You know, I think we're going to see, I know we're going to see some new street stocks that weren't out the first night. I think we're going to see a couple of new minis. There might be a couple of new trucks as well. So
Yeah.
fields are growing out at Kings Park, and we're looking forward to it.
And so are the crowds.
Yeah, definitely. So, folks, make sure you come out Saturday night. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the cooling system. Again, with the weather getting warmer and people hitting the highway, something they want to take a look at. I don't think you can really tell a lot that your water pump is going, but you want to make a look at it anyway.
At it, yeah. Take it by a shop, and what they can look for is any play in the pulley. Basically, the impeller that comes through the center, the bearings can get worn out. But the first sign that they'll notice, if you've got a guy who's really looking over the car as a mechanic, they'll take a look up, and there's an air hole that sits on the bottom of the water pump.
Okay.
And the very first sign, pretty much, of a water pump that's going is it starts to drip.
Oh,
A little
okay.
bit of a leak from there. A lot of people condemn the lower rad hose because it seeps down through the hose.
Right.
And they say it's dripping off the hose.
So if I'm looking for that at home, is that on the top, or is that something that Joe in his garage mechanic is going to know?
Not really, no. It should be looked at probably, well, if you go in for an oil change.
Okay.
Your regular maintenance, the guy could just look up,
That's a
take a
good
look
time.
underneath it, and if it's, if it's visible.
Okay, good stuff. Thermostat. If it's not warming up in the winter, a lot of people change the thermostat and go to that. I assume that's as integral in the summer as well?
That's the most important part of it as far as I'm concerned. The thermostat does do a lot of work. I mean, it has to open up and close and open up and close.
Right.
There used to be a lot of people would think that we'll just take the thermostat out.
Okay.
That's going to keep it cool because it won't be heating the car up.
Right.
And actually, it is false, because what will happen is it doesn't allow the water to stop in the radiator, or the coolant to stop in the radiator long enough to cool down.
Okay.
Because if it can't cool down and go back into the motor, it can't cool the motor down. So by rights, what it's doing is it'll actually allow it to build temperature slowly as it goes, and you'll eventually end up with a cooling problem. So that one thing definitely you got to look at, maybe replace it once a year.
Okay. So and it's an easy one, I think. I mean, people can do that one at home as well,
In
right?
most cases, on the older cars, yes. The newer ones, now they're starting to get a little more tricky.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, folks, if you've got some calls, you want to talk about cooling, or you want to talk about racing, or you want to talk general automotive as well, Quinton knows it all, and, well, I don't know much, but that's why I bring the experts on. So you're welcome to give us a call, 565-5376, and we'd be happy to try and answer your calls. Something else, temperature sender. Again, important winter, but also important in the summer.
Yes, it is. It used to be your temperature sender only pretty much controlled a gauge on your car. Now with the computer electronics that we have nowadays, this sender has to read what the motor temperature is, what it's doing, and changing your fuel strategy, and of course other components in the electrical system for the computer.
Right.
If the vehicle, again, the thermostat, if it's not heating up properly, the computer doesn't know that. It reads a temperature sensor. I brought one here it's not your common one.
Right.
But basically it's just a small little resistor that changes resistance through hot, through cold.
Okay.
And the computer sees a signal off that and makes adjustments according to that. So if your motor is running too hot all the time, it's going to be changing your fuel strategy.
Okay.
If it's too cold, it might be like in the older days, your choke would be on part-time.
Right.
And of course affecting your fuel mileage.
The computers have really come into play with a lot of the way that your engine runs, haven't they? And is that, again, something people can come in and hook it up and that's going to tell you if you're running too hot or too cold, or is that really what the computers do?
Well, the computer will monitor a system, a bunch of inputs, and change a bunch of outputs to make your car as drivable as possible and keep it at a good emissions level,
Okay.
basically.
Right.
Okay, without getting too far into it. Something like a check engine light coming on or going in to find out what's wrong, people have the feeling that you can pull into a garage, they hook it up, and it says, this is wrong.
Okay.
Okay. The newer ones are getting better, but it'll give you an area for the technician to look into, and it all boils down to the technician and how he reads that information.
Okay. All right. Looks like we've got a couple of calls, so why don't we go right to one right now? Hi, thank you very much for holding. You're on In Gear.
Good evening. How are you guys?
We're well. Yourself?
Really good, thanks.
Good.
I have a question about racing.
Sure.
I know that both of you guys have the occasion to drive the WBM car when it's racing.
We do.
And I know there's a little bit of difference between you guys in weight.
Okay, not that much.
No, I didn't say
We're getting
that.
closer. He's gaining weight and I'm losing weight. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, like, what does that do as far as the setup of the car? Is there something special that you guys have to do to be able to do it, or do you have to commit to one guy driving one day and another guy driving on another, or what do you do?
Okay, who gets to handle the weight question, you or me?
You can.
Okay. Well, what we try and do is we try and set it up in the middle, actually, because what we like to do is we like to share the driving each night. Sometimes Quentin will drive a little bit more in one night and I'll drive a little bit more the next, but we try and set it up as a happy medium. We were out the other night doing a little bit of testing, and it does make a difference because we are about 50 or 60 pounds different, so, and it makes... Yeah, about that anyway.
Oh,
he's
okay.
skinny. He's skinny. It's not that I'm real fat. He's just real skinny. So we kind of try and set it up in the middle, and we can adjust front to back a little bit as well. So we try and work it that way.
Ah, well, it sounds great. Keep doing the good work.
We do appreciate the call, and will you be out Saturday night to watch?
I'm going to do my darndest.
All right, good stuff. Thank you very much for the call.
Thank you.
Okay. Also, folks, want to remind you we're going to be going to Boston Pizza. We're going to be going to, which one are we going to tonight? The Quant Street location. So the East Boston Pizza, come on down and chat with Quentin, myself, and all the crew, and Randy Clark. I believe Randy, producer guy, will be there tonight. So, you know, you can even talk about TV if you want, and he'd be happy to answer all your questions as I look at him in the booth. So make sure you come and see us at Boston Pizza a little later on. Looks like we've got another call, so we'll go to that right now. Okay. Hi, thanks for holding. You're on In Gear.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. My name is Ornell.
Okay.
My question is regarding about the changing of a spark plug or something.
Okay, sure.
Is it there's a different about the new spark plug right now, or it's better to use the manufactured spark plug for your vehicle or something?
Are you speaking in the case of using the original from the manufacturer?
Yeah.
Compared to an aftermarket plug?
Yeah.
Okay. Some people say there is a difference on that. I think more what you should be worried about is the what kind of load you're putting on the motor, what kind of thing you're doing with it. Yeah, from the dealership's fine. That's the way that they want to sell the parts for that application, and the aftermarket ones are just as good. I really can't say. I haven't seen anything that's said otherwise.
Yeah, because those, they call it the Boss Platinum Plus 4 or something.
Okay, now if you're getting into the Platinums, really, what I was told by a representative from the company was that the Platinums are a longer life plug. That's how they're getting away with the 100,000 kilometer tune-ups now. And they're just a longer life. They don't give you any more spark or anything. Now I could be, totally mistaken on this, but this is what I was told by a representative. They're just a longer lasting plug.
So really, I mean, if you go with manufacturer, OEM, that's going to be good, but the Champions of the world, the Bosch of the world, are still going to do just as good of a job, I would imagine.
That's right. They all make a good spark plug.
Okay. Did that help, sir?
Oh yeah, but just wondering what they call those plus 4. Is it big helps or is it almost the same with the normal spark plug we use?
In a case of that, your best bet would be go down to the place that sells them, and they'll have a chart on comparing them to different spark plug brands or different types, or maybe it's something new that's out, and they'll be able to give you that information there.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Okay.
All right.
Sure.
Thank you very much for the call.
Yeah, thank you too.
Bye-bye. All right, we've got one more caller. We'll ask them to hold on for a little bit because now we have got part 2 of something that we started last week. Dennis DeRosier of DeRosier's Automotive Consultants from down east got a chance to talk to Gersh Matter a little while ago. We've got part 2 of that, and again, you'll be able to see the full interview on Plugged In, and I'll get the date for that when we come back. But for right now, let's take a look at the Auto Guru here on In Gear.
The dealers struggle with the internet consumer because there's a disconnect. They've never really had to deal with the internet consumer. The internet consumer is generally young, very informed. Dealers have traditionally dealt with consumers that aren't informed. The dealers have traditionally been in the power position. They know all the information. They control the process. The internet consumer prefers to control. So it's kind of like a role reversal. A lot of car dealers struggle with that.
So are we now going to see dealers perhaps changing a little bit more to be consumer friendly and perhaps to try and pick up from what is happening with this internet phenomenon?
Oh, the dealer has to change as a result of the internet. Perhaps the biggest influence of the internet on the dealer isn't all the business that they can do with the internet, is it forces them to change. I've always said in this auto industry, and this isn't quite fair to the car dealer, but there's billionaires, millionaires, and there's thousandaires. And the billionaires are the vehicle companies, and the millionaires are the car dealers, and the thousandaires are all the consumers. And for most of the last 2-3 decades I've studied this industry, the millionaires are fighting with the billionaires, and the thousandaires the consumers just tend to get forgotten. What the internet has done is empower all of those consumers. And now all of those dealers out there and all of those factory guys have to listen to the consumer because the consumer is becoming more powerful than any dealer. He doesn't have to go to the dealership anymore. He can sit in his home. He can remain totally anonymous. You know, you don't have to confront the salesman who has been trained for years and years to get you to close that deal. You don't need to. It's all anonymous. It's all in your computer sitting in your own desk at home.
So Dennis, as Canada's automotive guru, are you finding that more and more dealers are coming to you and trying to get a handle and an understanding of what that consumer out there is now and how they can best serve them?
You know, sadly, it's not the car dealers that are coming to us. It's the big factories. It's the Fords and the Toyotas and the Hondas of the world that are coming to us and saying, boy, we really get it. We understand the threat of the internet, and we've got to get up to speed. So we've done a lot of work at the factory level, at the vehicle company level. Now, hopefully, some of that work finds its way to the car dealer. But the car dealer is kind of like betwixt and between. To tell you the truth, we find many car dealers are resisting it. The car dealers, for instance, are fighting cats and dogs information going on the internet. In the United States, you can go into a dozen different internet sites, and the most popular one is called kellybluebook.com, KBB.com. And you can get dealer invoice pricing in the United States. Millions of consumers. The most hit internet site in the American auto industry is kellybluebook.com because it has dealer invoice price. The Canadian car dealers are up in arms that we actually might put dealer invoicing pricing on a Canadian internet site. And they're fighting it cats and dogs. I'm saying, like, guys, wake up. That's the internet consumer. He wants all the information. He wants the pricing. He wants to be able to have full access. You can't resist it. And what the consumer is doing now in Canada says, well, if the car dealer in Canada won't do it, we'll go to the American site. And so they go into the American site, get all of this pricing information, and all of it's wrong. So now you got the consumer in Canada collecting wrong information from an American site, walking into his car dealer in Canada with bad information, and then you wonder why why there's so much discontent. You know, the consumer's wrong, the car dealer is wrong, everybody's avoiding these kinds of things. Car dealers need a real waking up here. Car dealers need to embrace the internet, embrace putting information on. There's nothing wrong with all of this. They say, well, if we put our pricing on the internet, we'll all go bankrupt. Give me a break. Pricing on the internet, dealer pricing on the internet, has been available forever in the United States. Car dealers in the United States haven't all gone bankrupt. So what's the problem? You're better to have an informed consumer that you're honest with. Most consumers are willing to give you a fair profit. They're not trying to rip you off. They understand that you've got to make a living. They understand that your salesman has to make a living. They understand that you have taxes to pay just like them. They don't want to be ripped off. A fair profit is acceptable, not an obscene profit. But they also don't want you to take a loss. So I think dealers really need to rethink themselves, and it's probably got a ways to go. Again, like I say, the average age of the dealer principal is 59. The average age of the internet consumer is under 25. And there's a real disconnect on the age side that has to be addressed still.
Now, you just touched on taxes, and I know that one of the reasons that for a long time many people purchased a used car was because they were getting a break on their taxes.
Yes.
But we're beginning to see that change now.
Well, your government has tackled used vehicles and gone after them from the tax, and I'm not sure the details, I'm not intimate with the details out there, but they're idiots. They're absolute idiots, the government people. You know, here you have the fundamental need of a consumer in this market, especially in Saskatchewan, where it's a rural agrarian society, is to get around. How can you survive without a vehicle? And what they're doing is saying, we're going to make it more, the fundamental, transportation in your marketplace is as fundamental as healthcare. It's as fundamental as education. And your government is going in and taxing it and saying, well, we're going to make it more difficult. They're nuts, absolutely nuts. You know, the vehicle companies have spent billions of dollars trying to make vehicles more affordable for consumers. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the average manufacturer sales price in Canada is $3,000 to $5,000 lower than the average manufacturer sales price in the United States. So if you go in and get MSRP in Canada, it's $3,000 to $5,000 lower than the United States. Add all the taxes in Canada that you don't have in the States, the average transaction price in your driveway is $1,000 to $2,000 more. So here is the government going in, your government, the federal governments, the provincial governments across this country, and literally stealing all of that money out of your pocket. It's a pure tax grab, pure as simple as that.
Now, of course, if you talk to a politician, they would reason that out and say, we need highways, we need to look at, and especially in Saskatchewan,
but they don't put the money back into the highways. They take all of this money out of the auto sector and out of the automotive community, and they use it for their general purposes. If they invested it in roads, we the automotive consumer, would have less trouble. 1 in 7 jobs in Canada, 1 in 6 in Ontario, 1 in 8 in Saskatchewan are tied directly or indirectly to the automotive sector. And here you're telling the consumers through your tax policies to buy less. Like, if you want to have more jobs, you want to have more economic activity, you should be taxing the auto industry less, not more. You want the consumers to buy more, to drive more, and generate all of the economic activity around that. I just don't understand a politician. These guys are nuts.
So if you had your way, what would you do?
Well, I certainly would slowly but surely try to lower, if not potentially eliminate, taxes on vehicles. Use it as a fundamental need. Do we go to the hospital, do you get a tax bill? Do you pay sales tax?
Well, pretty soon we will.
on your hospital care? Do you, when you send your kids to grade school in the morning, do you have to pay tax on education? No, because education's a fundamental need. You know, healthcare is a fundamental need. Well, so is transportation. You know, how do you survive in this society without wheels? You've got to get around. And I think the government need to understand that and address those issues.
Now, Dennis, in all the research that you've done, let's talk about this love affair that we have with our vehicles.
Yes.
You know, and we look at our vehicles, and many times, you know, whether it's a status symbol or how are people viewing them?
Well, first of all, it's the Americans that have a love affair with their vehicles, not Canadians. The Americans have this God-given right to own a vehicle, drive it when they want, where they want. In fact, if you listen to the civil liberties movement, they have the God-given right to kill themselves because they won't wear seatbelts. You know, Canadians are ultra-conservative in their vehicle buying habits and ownership habits. It comes back to the government. The government thinks this is a luxury. Canadians don't view it as a luxury. They view it as a necessary evil, a means of transportation. I'll give you some statistics behind that. The most popular vehicles bought in Canada are smaller vehicles. It's the Ford Focus, it's the Honda Civic, it's F-Series pickup trucks, it's CK pickup trucks. The most popular vehicles bought in the United States are Accords and Camrys and luxury vehicles. On a market share basis, Canadians buy half as many sport utility vehicles as Americans. We buy twice as many minivans, because a minivan is a very practical, ordinary vehicle. And that's what Canadians like to buy and drive. We are very conservative in our buying habits. We're very, in many respects, responsible in our driving habits. Going back a couple months ago when all of the frou-frou over gas prices going up, and everybody focused on the sport utility vehicle. And, my God, all these people bought sport utility vehicles. Isn't that terrible? Gas prices are going up. Whoa, wait a second now. Canadians didn't buy these sport utility vehicles. Americans did. It wasn't an issue in Canada at all. And perhaps that's why all of these gas price increases quickly kind of disappeared. It's not a big deal in the media anymore. Because the fundamental economics of it was, hell, we're buying Focuses with tremendous fuel economy. You know, you can increase the gas price 50, 60, 70%. It's going to cost you an extra $5, $10 a week. Most consumers can afford that.
Is that an issue when people are looking at buying either a new car or a used car? What am I going to get? You know, how much mileage am I going to get? And are people aware of the environment, you know, emissions, those types of things?
Very much so. In fact, if you ask them about the vehicle that they own, and you ask them what features they like best or what features were most important, air conditioning comes in number 1, the radio or their music system comes in number 2, and fuel economy ranks usually number 3 in terms of their priority. All very, very high. Much higher than safety issues and drivability and fit and finish and things like that. When you ask the consumer, interestingly, if you were to go out and buy a vehicle today, what would be the number 1 feature you look for? It's fuel economy. Now, perhaps because fuel has been in the news recently and that's increased their profile. But I think it also is because you fill up your gas tank every single week, often twice a week, and fuel prices are in your face. You know, you pull up, and you don't understand fuel prices. You know, wait a second now, the gasoline in the ground last week was 79 cents, and the same gasoline in the ground this week is 85 cents. How can that be? You know? And so, because it's so in your face, it's so immediate, it's so visible that consumers focus on fuel economy. In reality, the economics of it doesn't make a lot of sense. It costs an average consumer in Canada somewhere around $700, $800 a year for their gasoline on an annualized basis. So that's not a lot of money, all things considered. Somewhere $60 to $80, maybe $90 a month. That's relatively affordable. Our gas prices still are relatively cheap.
Well, when you're dealing with manufacturers and dealers, are those considerations, are they concerns, are they thinking about those types of things?
Oh, very much so. Oh, very much so. The vehicle companies turned green. They're very environmentally friendly, and the 3 social policy agenda items that they touch is fuel economy, emissions, and all of the environmental issues, and safety. And they have poured billions of dollars into those 3 public policy kinds of initiatives. So vehicles today are more than half. In fact, they burn about 1/3 to half on the average vehicle fuel today per kilometer than they did back, I think it was 15 years ago. They have eliminated over 90% of the emissions in a vehicle, the vehicle companies have. And look at the safety features in a vehicle. You've got airbags, you've got anti-lock brakes, you've got better technology, better build. When you're in an accident, you're unlikely to have any intrusion into your space. They have spent a lot of money improving vehicles. And that's perhaps why the used vehicle market has become so important in this country. Because they've invested those billions in the better technology and better safety and better environment and better fuel economy in the new vehicle, again, that translates down to, well, that's still there 3 years, 4 years, 5 years later in the used vehicle.
So does this present a dilemma for manufacturers? Because if you're having as much movement on the used car market as you are in the new car market, how are they going to be able to sustain and continue?
Well, we've moved from vehicles being almost a disposable item and into a vehicle that will last and last and last and last. You know, there's no more planned obsolescence in vehicles. We did an interesting analysis as part of our current piece of work. We went back to all of the junkyards and all of the boneyards, going back 30 years, actually. And we got from them the average odometer reading that a vehicle was scrapped, that came off the road. In the 1970s, the average vehicle lasted about 150,000 kilometers, that's all. This past year, the average vehicle coming off the road in Canada was over 250,000 kilometers on the odometer reading. So in the last 15 years, maybe 20 years, when that consumer that went out to buy a vehicle bought an extra 100,000 kilometers of use. And remember, the vehicles coming off the road today were the ones that were sold in the 1970s or the 1980s, the early 80s. So the vehicles that you're buying today, the new vehicles you're buying today, will probably last you 300,000 kilometers easily. So you get 300,000 kilometers of use. I laugh sometimes that people say, oh my God, vehicles are so expensive. If you look at how much you drive them and how much you drive them through the life of the vehicle, owning and driving a vehicle is probably less than than owning a telephone. You get these, Sprint fighting with TELUS, etc., for 10 cents a minute, 8 cents a minute, 5 cents a minute, and all that kind of stuff. A vehicle's cheaper than that per kilometer rather than per minute. So it's a pretty good deal. And that's one of the reasons why consumers embrace vehicles, and they like to drive them and own them, and they have so much fun with them.
Did you know? In 1910, magician Harry Houdini was the first solo pilot to fly a plane in Australia. He taught himself to drive an automobile just so he could drive out to the airfield, and he never drove again. One-time license, one-time ride, that's all he needed.
Must have been a good car.
He could just do this,
Just that.
and that's all he needed to do, and he got places.
Maybe locked himself out.
I think so. Folks, want to tell you that actually right after In Gear tonight, you are going to get a chance to see that full interview that Gersh did with Dennis on the used automobile. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And of course, we'll have part 3 next week. And if you don't get a chance to see right after, watch for that next week. Also, what we'd like to do right now is if you have something coming up this summer that has to do with automobiles or has an engine in it and does something, give us a line here at access7.regina@accesscom.ca. That, of course, our email address. Again, access7.regina@accesscom.ca. If there's something you'd like to see on the show, if there's a guest you'd like us to have, or if you have some comments or suggestions, or again, if you've got an event coming up and you'd like to be a guest on the show, please drop us a line. You can also drop me a line at www.wbmracing.ca. That's my email on there. And you can also call Randy, our producer, here at Access 7 at 535-5378. Pardon me, 565-5378. You can give Randy a call and talk to him if you've got something coming up, so please let us know. We want to make sure that we're good to go before we go out on the highway. So take a look again at the belts, at the hoses, everything underneath. Make sure the antifreeze is topped up. It's got to have a nice green glow to it, I would imagine.
Yes, it does. And another thing I forgot to mention too that a lot of people don't check is the airflow through the rad. Of course, we have grasshoppers, gravel roads, we got a lot of stuff that can plug the rads up. That's one of the big offenders. You get a little nick or something, it starts crushing the fins down.
Okay.
You can't get proper cooling.
All right. Want to thank you very much. Where can the folks come and see you at Pro Certified?
We're at 2505 4th Avenue North, which is just up by the new Wendy's on Albert Street. We're 1 block east.
All right. Good stuff. Thank you very much, Quentin, for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Joey.
All right. And folks, want to remind you, tomorrow night, the Show and Shine at the A&W. Saturday, the Collectors Car Club, 6 o'clock at the T.C. Douglas Building, racing at Kings Park at 7, and then on Sunday at the North Canadian Tire, the Ford and Mercury Club are going to have their Show and Shine. Everybody's welcome to all of these events. We've got lots to come in the near future here on In Gear. Next week, hopefully we're going to have someone from Western Auto Body. We're going to be talking about cars and painting them and fixing them, and we're just going to continue to keep bringing you more information here on In Gear. Again, want to thank Quentin very much for being on tonight. Christopher and Riley, Dad loves you. Now it's time for bed. Folks, we'll see you next Thursday here on In Gear.
In Gear is brought to you in part by Boston Pizza. Come and get it all. And Kings Park Speedway. We're kicking asphalt.
Hi, this is Carmen J. Price, and you won't want to miss this weekend on Channel 7 for Eclipse's most highly anticipated show of